Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Ask Her webinar. I'm Sarah Weatherby, Director of Communications at Washington Area Women's Foundation, and we are thrilled to have you here today for what promises to be a dynamic and inspiring conversation about Black women in business. At the Women's Foundation, we are committed to investing in the power of women and girls of color across the Washington, D.C. region. Through grant making, advocacy, and strategic partnerships, we focus on addressing systemic inequities and creating opportunities that ensure all women and girls from birth to the boardroom can thrive. Today's discussion, Black Women in Business, celebrates the innovation, leadership, and resilience of Black women entrepreneurs while also addressing their unique challenges. Whether you're an established business owner, an aspiring entrepreneur, or an ally of Black women in business, we're so glad to have you join us. Now, before we begin, let's cover a few housekeeping items. First, feel free to engage with us and share your thoughts in the chat during the conversation. Secondly, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions for our panelists, and we will do our best to address as many as possible during the audience Q&A portion later in the session. And finally, if today's conversation inspires you in any way, we invite you to support our work at the Women's Foundation by making a contribution through our website at thewomensfoundation.org/askher as we continue to amplify the needs of our community. Now I am so excited to introduce today's moderator, Sydney Chandler Monet Collins. Sydney is a recipient of the Women's Foundation's 2024 Prince George's County Rockstar Fund and an award-winning social entrepreneur, podcaster, and philanthropist. She's a sophomore at Howard University and the founder and CEO of Perfect Timing Podcast, a platform where she uplifts Gen Z changemakers and innovators. Sydney, we're so glad to have you here today, and I'll pass it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me, for inviting me to help moderate this conversation today. Like she said, hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Chandler Monet. I'm a sophomore at Howard University studying strategic communications. I'm the founder, CEO, and host of Perfect Timing Podcast, and I am a proud recipient of the Women's Foundation's Rockstar Fund. And I'm so excited to be here today and to moderate this important discussion on the leadership, resilience, and influence of Black women in business. So as I open up our hashtag Ask Her panel, it's essential to recognize that Black women have long been at the forefront of economic empowerment, innovation, and social change, not just shaping industries, but actively investing in their communities and building pathways for future generations. However, we know that systematic challenges still persist, and I know you guys all are aware of the recent DEI rollback initiatives and efforts. So conversations like this are more crucial now than ever. So now is the time to reaffirm our commitment to equity, access, and sustained investment in Black women's success. So today we have the privilege of hearing from two incredible Black women leaders and entrepreneurs who will share their journeys and obstacles that they face and the strategies that they've used to thrive in business while encouraging economic change. This discussion will not only highlight their impact, but also explore meaningful ways we can all support Black-owned businesses and amplify their contributions. So like Sarah said, please, I encourage you guys to I encourage you guys to work with us and just engage in the chat and in the Q&A function box, as we will address those later in our conversation. And I'm just so excited to host a powerful conversation that is action-oriented. I love a good panel. I feel like that's one of the best ways to engage with our community in a safe environment. So like I said, please engage with us this afternoon. So let's get started. And I'd love to introduce you all to our incredible panelists, Ms. Jon'll Boyd and Angel Gregorio. So first we have Ms. Jon'll Boyd. Jon'll is a trailblazer in the wine industry, co-founding Boyd Cru Wines with her husband, Matthew, in 2021 and bringing it into fruition in 2023, so congratulations. As Maryland's first Black family-owned grass-to-glass integrated wine company, Boyd Cru Wines is dedicated to producing vibrant, approachable, and award-winning wines crafted from 100% Maryland-grown grapes. Jon'll's vision extends beyond businesses. She aims to create a legacy that serves women and families, inspiring others to pursue their passions and with the audacity and without limitations. And I love that. Through Boyd Cru Wines, she's not only crafting exceptional wines, but also cultivating a community that values growth, connection, and shared experiences. So I'm not yet 21, but if you have the capabilities to do so, I encourage you to go join with her. She's having a tasting coming up very, very soon in the Maryland and DMV area. So go ahead and check her out. And we also have Angel Gregorio. She's also a fellow Bison, so hello. Angel is the founder and owner of the Spice Suite, a community-centric spice boutique in Washington, D.C., offering unique culinary experiences with fresh spice blends and oils from around the world. Committed to improving the lives of at-risk youth and families, Angel previously worked in educational leadership roles as a teacher, counselor, and vice principal. Now also the owner, and she's also the owner of Black and Forth, a multi-use commercial space. She has transformed it to a house to house the Spice Suite and support Black women entrepreneurs and the growth of their businesses. So sound up in the chat. Let's give our panelists a huge round of applause for joining us this afternoon. So thank you both again here for joining us today, and let's go ahead and get started. So this question can be for both of you to kick things off. I want to start with a broad question that sets the tone for our discussion. Jon'll and Angel, could you each share a bit about your entrepreneurial journey, what inspired you to begin, and what has kept you motivated throughout this process?
It doesn't matter who starts. Yeah, so I got that was a lot of points in one question. That was a lot. So I'll start with kind of my journey to getting from assistant principal to Spice Suite was probably, one of the most serendipitous things I've done. I didn't set out to be a Spice Girl. I didn't know that my journey would lead me to where it has. But I always say I'm really living a dream I didn't know I had, by being the owner of the Spice Suite and now, the owner of a strip mall and having Spice Girls and building the community that I've built and having the type of impact that we've had. My motivation has always been community. I've always worked in community prior to owning the Spice Suite, even before being an assistant principal. One of my first like real jobs, meaning like a salary, that was a big deal. Like being able to have like a salary and PTO was a teaching at a youth jail. And so there was where it kind of like cemented for me that like community is where I belong and where I need to be. And so everything that I've done since then has really been kind of an extension of that. So even though I run the Spice Suite now, I spend a lot of my spare time working with folks who are impacted by mass incarceration. I spend a lot of time in youth jails just because that means a lot to me. And I also have, brothers serving life in prison. Both of my parents have been impacted by the justice system, have been in prison. So I find myself wandering into those spaces that feel really familiar to me. Yeah.
So I'll jump in here after Angel. You know, I trying to remember all of the questions as well, but I too, very have always been very community oriented. I think for me, um, a lot of my entrepreneurship, it happened by, just happenstance. Even prior to before starting Boyd Cru Wines, as I mentioned, I was in the event planning industry, and even my entry into that industry was not something that I would have saw for myself. It actually happened because of being downsized from my corporate job. I was laid off, and at the time, I worked in kind of community development, sales, marketing, and a lot of it was focused around planning events in that corporate position. And it dawned on me that if I could do that in the corporate setting, that I could do that out in the world on my own, for myself. And so it's funny because I always say that I never quite saw myself as an entrepreneur. However, I think this goes to show that sometimes when we don't really look at our family history and the things that we experience as we grew up as, from a child to adolescence, a lot of my family is I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So to say that I didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur is kind of laughable because that's all that I was surrounded by when I was growing up. So I think, it is something that I wouldn't change for the world. Entrepreneurship has afforded me the opportunity to meet people and have impact in my community in ways that I would have never thought of. So the journey isn't always easy, but I'm grateful for it and still on it. So
Absolutely. I adore that. And as a fellow entrepreneur, I can say, how much impact and fulfillment that you get just from wanting to serve your community. And my cousin, he shared this quote with me, I think like about a year ago, about 2 years ago. And he says, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And I just feel like that is truly at the heart of what a lot of entrepreneurs do. And similarly to how you guys fell into your pathways of entrepreneurship, I saw a disparity within my community in terms of mental health. It was the middle of the pandemic. Black Lives Matter movement was going on. It's like, what on earth are we going to do? And my mom, she posed the question. She's like, what are you going to do within your community to create change during such a negative and scary time? And she was like, why don't you start a podcast? I'm like, never heard of it. Why not? And it's become one of the greatest things I've ever been able to do and just share my voice. And, when I was younger, I used to hate speaking. You couldn't pay me to do it. And now I do it for a living, which is kind of funny. But like you said, like you never know what comes up and how much fulfillment you can get just from stepping out and what happens when you want to serve your community. And Angel, I want to lift up what you said as well, in terms of mass incarceration within our communities. Funnily enough, I'm taking a course right now at Howard University called Mass Incarceration in the Black Family. And I just think that it's so integral for people to learn about the systematic changes, know about the school to prison pipeline, why that's important and how that impacts Black communities specifically. So beyond what you do with your SPICE organization, I'm glad that you were going into those spaces and helping at risk youth as well. So as we continue our conversation, my next question is for you, Janelle. And the co-founding of Maryland's first Black family-owned wine company. It is so remarkable and such an incredible achievement. So again, congratulations.
Thank
So in
you.
an industry with such limited Black representation, what does it mean to you to be a trailblazer? And how do you hope that Boyd Cru Wines will shape the future of the wine industry?
So I'll start with what it means to be a trailblazer. You know, I don't think when we started this that we were necessarily setting out to be the first Black-owned wine company in Maryland, but I do think that it's important, and I've always felt like it's important that there be representation in any industry, especially one that I feel called to, feel led to, and so that was one of our motivations, and one of the things that inspired us to really take the leap of faith and jump into this was that we did not see ourselves represented in this. But when I look at, the word trailblazer, I really think about more so of what is the impact that's going to have on the people that are coming behind you. And, I feel like this industry itself for a long time has been very traditional, very non-diverse. And it's time for that to change, especially when you see that the consumer side of things is very much diverse, yet the ownership and industry side of things is not. So there's a gap, right? And I can remember my grandmother always telling me that wherever there's a gap, it's usually your job to fill it. So that's definitely important, and then I think that as a Black-owned wine company, I hope that we also chart a path that allows others to step into this industry in a different way. I mentioned that it's very traditional, and I think sometimes in tradition, while tradition can be good, I think that tradition sometimes also limits us. And hopefully, moving forward, that tradition will get replaced by new traditions that come about from people finding different avenues and different ways to enter this industry that can still be successful.
I completely agree. Last night I was at my younger brother's high school. They invited me as a special guest to speak at their Black History Expo, which was so exciting for me. And something that I mentioned in my conversation is that as we cultivate Black history, we are becoming the first to do many things. But hopefully one day I hope we get to a point where we're not just first, but we're just next in line. So as you mentioned that you are a third generation entrepreneur, like do you know how many generational curses and how many pathways that you were creating just by being you and how you were inspiring other people around you? They always say, shine your light as it liberates others to do the same. And I think as we lead
Absolutely.
by example, and like you said, fill in that gap of representation, we're letting not only just youth in the following generation, but just even people in our circle know that they can achieve those same things. And as you're breaking a barrier within the wine industry, because there's not at least not to me that I know, there's not a lot of Black women or, Black business owners that have wine industry. So as you break that barrier, you are exposing so many communities to what else that they can do and to reach their full potential. And of course, we can get into a conversation of the capital bend and separation between us and our white counterparts. The more that we break those barriers, like you said, and the more that we go out there, the more people will be into investing in us and the Black dollar and how valuable it is. So these boycotts that are going on, some of these organizations are going to find out real quick what happens when you don't want to value the Black dollar and the things that we create within our communities. So thank you so much for that response. But I want to stay on you just a little bit more with another question. I want to know, as you have been recognized as the Washington Business Journal's Small Business Leader of the Year, what does that recognition mean to you, especially as entrepreneurs in the wine industry, like I just mentioned? And how has that fueled your mission and vision for Boyd Cru Wines?
Well, I mean, obviously, it definitely is an honor to have that recognition. But I want to, point more to the timing of it, right? I think the fact that, as you mentioned, that we're experiencing a really unique time in our economic system where you have large corporations doing these rollbacks, these DEI rollbacks. You have a lot of division that has been just cast out here and into the world. And then a lot of cutting back of federal workers' jobs. I mean, just a lot that's going on that is impacting people and their lives in different ways. And, when I think about small businesses, I always say small businesses honestly are the backbone of our American society. And when I think about how we do what we do, part of it comes with the freedom to be able to do what we do in the way that we need to. And so I think that, the timing of getting this recognition and honor is actually what is more astounding to me than the recognition itself, because I look at this as being a time for small businesses to really explore what freedom looks like in a way that is going to be beneficial for us as small businesses. And sometimes that means harnessing what you do well within the framework that you do it. And I'll just to add some context, I'll provide an example, and I'm sure Angel can speak to this as well. But we've always envisioned, as we kind of approach this opening of our tasting room, we've always envisioned it being a community hub for small businesses as well, minority-owned small businesses. And so we're in a position to be able to establish some programs like our retail residency program, which will hopefully allow minority-owned small businesses to be able to set up in our tasting room in a way that'll help them drive traffic for at least 12 months. And have that continuity of being able to drive visibility, being able to get in front of their customer base, which is very challenging for small businesses, particularly ones that have products, but also service-based businesses sometimes as well. But it's things like this that I hope will allow us to really take it by the wheel and drive that thing home, because we don't have to depend on big box businesses and big corporate. Yes, it may take longer, and I'm not as naive to think that, we can do it in the same amount of time. So yes, it may take longer, but sometimes longer is the way. Sometimes that is what builds the stamina, and that is what builds the endurance. And so that's really, I know that was a long way to get to the answer that you were asking, but that is what really being Small Business of the Leader of the Year award means to us.
I love that. And again, congratulations on that incredible honor. I
Thank you.
are truly deserving. And especially within your response, why not now? Why not start? And again, with these struggles that we've been facing within the Black community, it's not a it's not a way for us to stop what we're doing. If anything, it should empower us to continue to push forward. And while these corporations are going to use anything in their power to keep us from receiving those grants, receiving funding, because as an entrepreneur, I know myself how like that is the most difficult part. Sometimes it's not engagement. Sometimes it's not getting people to, have that visibility that you were mentioning. It's the money, and sometimes people don't want to invest in that. But as we continue to pursue and push forward, and as people find out the value in investing in small businesses, we can see that upbringing and we can see that encouragement again within our community, Black and otherwise, to continue to invest in small businesses. So again, congratulations. And Angel, I'm going to go ahead and move over to you. So your transition from an educational leadership to entrepreneurship is truly inspiring to me. You've built the Spice Suite in the Black and Forth as spaces rooted in community empowerment, particularly for Black women. And Black History, Women's History Month is coming up next month. So that transition from Black history to women's history is incredible. And I want to see, I know I've read a few articles about you within Howard's database about what that month means to you. So I want to know, how does your community shape your business decisions, and what motivates you to your commitment to uplifting others as you grow?
I always tell people, like, you can't expect community to show up for you if you don't show up in it, right? And so as a business owner who has like an actual product to sell, like, I need people to show up and purchase the product. And I can't simply stand here with my hand out asking people to show up and support the Spice Suite and buy with us and skip the grocery store, and they don't ever see me serving in community. So it's always important to me to be in community. Is where I've come from. It's what, has shaped kind of who I am, being a community servant. So even prior to the Spice Suite, like everybody in DC knew who I was just from serving and showing up and working in violence intervention spaces and community service and running GED programs and all sorts of things. And that has really like shaped my business, because it helps to create my business model, right? Like, I have this model of having these Black women. So we don't just support Black women, right? Like we have a lot of Black women who pop up with us, but it's really just Black people. And I am very clear in saying Black people and not people of color and not minority. Like, I'm very clear. Like, I don't want there to be any confusion about who I'm talking about when I say that, because I intentionally built the space for us. And so it has been the thing that has changed how I do business, like inviting community into my space. Like, we went from hosting the free pop-up shops, which we still do, but to then building out this tribe of women that we call Spice Girls, who, we have this exchange with, and they help to run the Spice Suite, and they have this consistent space where they are allowed to pop up and sell their products on a regular recurring basis. We've done that for 9 years now. And we've served, I think we've hosted, the last time we looked at our data, we've hosted over 4,500 pop-ups for free in the past 9 years. Over 2,600 different business owners have come through the Spice Suite to sell their products. And there's no exchange of money that happens, right? Like, there's no fine print. They don't owe me anything. It is simply me saying, like, here is space and opportunity, because that's a lot of times what a lot of Black business owners need, are space and opportunity. And so I have it, and so I extend it.
Incredible. And I find that incredibly valuable as we step into and as we continue to be, Black entrepreneurs in this space, that representation, and just saying, I want you here just because, like you said, you are Black. There's no gray space. There's no gray area. You are Black. You are an entrepreneur. And I want to make sure that you get that visibility as the Spice Girls has, as this Spice organization that you are holding. That exposure is so important. And as we continue through this space, I lost my train of thought of what exactly I was going to say, but I find it important that it came back. This is why we breathe and we're patient, right? This is why it's so important to highlight the spaces and mention, of course, that you are from the community that you are representing, that you want to expose. I've recently been a part of this Youth Advocacy Council for grant making, and they specifically chose women from all over America to represent these communities that they want to invest in. So as I look within the DMV area, I'm finding communities and groups that I want to support and that I have a way to give money to, because I mentioned the importance of funding and everything earlier. Being in my position and knowing the representation that I have of the community I come from, your exposure of the businesses around you, I feel, is just as important. Mm-hmm. So staying on you for another question, your work has been featured in major and national outlets, and your brand continues to grow exponentially. So how has storytelling helped you build visibility and create a loyal customer base? And what role has authenticity played in growing your platform?
Y'all don't play about doubling up these questions. I sat in on a lot of interviews. Yeah, I mean, the notoriety of the Spice Suite has really been like really organic, right? I've not, I think the first time I ever paid for any marketing was 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I think I paid once. And that was to put the Spice Girls and me on Metro buses. As a person born and raised in DC, as a DC native, the Metro buses, it's iconic, right? Like we rode, like my friends and I, we grew up taking different routes to get home. And so I wanted to put our faces on those routes, on the routes that would take them from uptown to southeast and, in the hoods. It wasn't really a marketing thing, right? I didn't put the buses out in Tyson's or in Silver Spring or Bethesda where people, were more affluent. It was really just about representation and storytelling and hoping that a little girl, a little boy, even a mom or dad, standing at the bus stop could see a Black face that looks, like them on their way to work in the morning or on their way to school in the morning. And storytelling has just been, it's essential to being a small business owner, right? Like we don't have the luxury I don't have the, let me not say we, I don't have the luxury of coming from a background of influence and affluence, right? So I don't have a mommy, a daddy, a auntie, a granddaddy, somebody who, whose name means something, right? Like a Louis Vuitton or Gucci, or, like these big brands where that you don't need to know who owns it, right? You just know the legacy, who came before, the quality, the craftsmanship. And so you buy it for that reason. But as a small business owner, people are typically buying things for you, right? Like they are buying into you. Like when I worked in education, I would also often tell my teachers, kids don't learn from people they don't like. Right. And it translates similarly into business that people don't tend to buy from people that they don't like. Like you can't be, the mean girl and preaching women's empowerment and think that people are going to show up and buy your product. Right. Like there needs to be something to back it up. And that's where the storytelling comes into play. And just being honest and authentic in how you tell stories. Right. I've not hired anybody to run my social media in the 9 years that I've been in business because it needs to be my voice. And I really don't have the time or energy or desire to teach someone how to sound like me so that my social media continues to sound like me speaking to people. I say y'all and I say peace. And like they're words that just sound like me when I jump on live, or even if I'm just typing a caption, you can hear my voice when you're saying it. But I think the storytelling also helps you to fine tune like who you're talking to. And when things feel like conversational, then people feel comfortable and then people feel a part of your community and your tribe. And for me, that's always just going to be a very real thing for me. Like I'm a lot more introverted than people think. So I'm not the girl that, has a name for their followers or call us the jumps on live. And I'm like, hi friends. Like, I don't really use that word that loosely. Like, I know that sounds cute, but I don't do that. Right. Like we're not friends and I don't even want to act like we're friends. Cause if you know me for real, then I would never do that. I would never go into a group of strangers and say hi friends. Right. But for some people that works for them on social media, they have a name for their followers, or when they jump on live, they refer to them as something very familiar because that helps them to connect with them. But for me, that's not authentic. And so I am always who and how I am. And I am just really grateful to have been received in a lot of spaces and to have had the opportunity to interview and, connect with, practically every major, platform and print media there is. So I'm super grateful for that. It's been a beautiful journey.
Yeah, and we can see it played out here. I always think I like to believe that, authenticity, I feel, is way more important than numbers. But if you think about it, authenticity is what brings the numbers in. And, I recently was applying for this honor, and one of the question was, what makes you so amazing? And so thinking of like, the hats that I wear and like, the things I might do in the community, sometimes it takes me a minute to be like, how exactly is it that I engage and impact my community? So I just went to my support base, went to my friends, my family. I just asked them, I'm like, what do you guys think, would make me amazing? And every single one of them said that it was because of my authenticity. And having a social platform and putting myself out there in the internet, sometimes it's like, how is it that people think that I'm perceived? And some of these people that know me more personally, like for them to say that it is my authenticity and to be able to specifically push through hard things and have share a smile or share a word of encouragement, even though I'm going through something, is an integral piece of who people think that I am. And I carry that with me everywhere I go. I love to hold safe spaces. I love to host conversations like these. I love to expose my community to things that are valuable, that I find valuable. So being a part of this conversation with you two today has been so heartwarming for me. And I just see so much of myself in both of you. And I just want to I hope my audience and everyone that's here is feeling just as empowered as I am, which reminds me, please continue to engage with us, you all. We do have a Q&A session coming up in just a few. So if you have any more questions you'd like to ask, I know I have some personal questions I want to ask that we might get to if we have time, but please engage with that Q&A function. All right. We're coming a little bit to a close here, but I do have a few more questions for both of you, or you guys are both open to answer. So Black women face systemic challenges in businesses, especially when it comes to access to capital and resources, as I mentioned earlier. So I want to know, what strategies have you both worked with or worked for in your when you're overcoming these barriers, and what advice would you offer to other entrepreneurs, i.e. me, or anyone else in the room, navigating these similar obstacles?
Go ahead, Janelle. I just finished talking. Yeah.
Angel's like, I'm gonna tap out for a minute. I will say I do agree, resources for Black women and Black women entrepreneurs has been, it can be disparaging at times because I think, we tend to put so much passion and so much heart into what we do. And we work very hard, sometimes too hard at what we do as well, but then can't figure out why people don't want to give us no money. And I think that if people really looked at the numbers, and looked at it with an unbiased lens, right? Then I think that there would be plenty of evidence to support that, we should not have such a challenge getting the funds that we need to in order to run successful businesses. But some of the ways that we've been fortunate to overcome some of those barriers, and the wine industry has taught me a lot about overcoming some of those barriers, because it is a very high capital industry. And one of the things that we ran into very early on is being challenged by funding. And so in addition to, the grants and applying for grants, applying for accelerator programs, which I have been included and completed several. I think the most profound and impactful funding avenue that we were able to tap into was crowdfunding. And, I will be the first to say that I did not know as much about crowdfunding when we first ventured into it. Like many, I didn't really, I wasn't really sure as to how impactful it could be, not only to us as a small business, but also to our investors, who are really everyday people like me and you. Crowdfunding did not used to operate in that capacity when it came to investing, people being able to invest in businesses. We were barred from being able to invest in large corporations. You had to have a certain amount of money, or you had to have to be in a certain economical, socioeconomical status in order to invest in, Fortune 500 companies. And so that has changed. And I am a huge proponent now of small businesses really getting educated around crowdfunding and how that can totally change the game for not only your business, but the capital health and wealth of your business, but also how it can impact and support and elevate your community, which I think is the most important part of it. Because if you can spend $100 on Starbucks a month, which, let's be clear, we do that very easily sometimes, then you can invest $100 into a small business that is going to be a business that you get to participate in, that you get to invest in, consume, support, purchase items from. You can do that with the understanding that now not only are you being a part of something that is continuing to grow in your community, but also is impacting your own financial health and wealth and your legacy. And so I think that's probably been, the number one way we've been able to overcome, some of these hurdles with funding and still working to overcome. I want to be very, very transparent that the journey has not ended. We are still working to overcome some of these barriers as we continue to grow and grow into a full-fledged vineyard.
I think for us, I had not ever had to try to access capital until I purchased, and that's not really accessing capital, right? Like I never saw any loans until I went to buy the space that is now the strip mall that I own. So I grew up with no money. I grew up around a bunch of people with no money. So I was so scared to take out loans. I was so scared of credit cards. Like I didn't want any debt. Like I just seen too many people were making bad financial decisions. So I was kind of scarred by that. So my PTSD wouldn't allow me to do it. So for years, I've always operated the Spice Suite. I mean, even still with no business credit cards, with no business loans, with no like nothing, right? It's just like the money, the revenue from the Spice Suite, we've continued to reinvest it. And then a few years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess, when I went to purchase Black and Forth, then of course I had to get a mortgage because it was a $1.3 million acquisition. And that acquisition then came with all the construction costs. And so then I used my revenue to reinvest to cover the construction costs. But then we came into, it was just a nightmare of a project. That's a whole different Zoom. But along that journey, I learned that there were so many other things that I became responsible for, right? Like because the city deemed what I was building as a strip mall, that meant that I was responsible for bringing the public space up to code at my expense. That means the streets and the sidewalks, I had to pave them. The new curb cuts, I had to do them. The asphalt, I had to bring that in. The trees on the sidewalks, I had to plant them. Things that I had no idea that I was going to have to encounter on this project. So a $650,000 estimated renovation ended up costing me $2.3 million. So I didn't have $2.3 million in the bank, but that is where I tapped into my civic and community engagement, right? So as opposed to going to get loans, I reached out to local council members that I engage with, right? Like, so I'm not a stranger to them. So these council members know me. They see me in community. They see me showing up to hearings. They know my dedication to community. And so for me, when I ran into this issue of not having enough like cash flow and revenue to complete the project, I started to think about how difficult this has to be for other Black business owners who are likely going to try to do the same thing, right? I knew that people would see me opening Black and Forth and they would then say, oh, I want to own commercial property too. And so I reached out to one of the council members first. I reached out to Council Member Kenya McDuffie, and I was like, there just aren't enough Black business owners in DC that can afford commercial space. DC is expensive to live in, let alone, I mean, the commercial prices are just unbelievable, right? 1.3 million for my space, and it experienced a fire. It was like dilapidated. So this wasn't like a beautiful space. It needed to be completely gut. And everything had to be, all the infrastructure had to be created on top of it. So I told him that, I see this issue with access to capital for Black people and getting loans to be able to purchase commercial space. And so I then helped to create what is now the Commercial Property Acquisition Fund in DC. And so, I usually kind of move into activist mode, right? Whenever I see issues. So instead of going to the banks, I was like, I'm gonna go to the council. Like the city has the budget, like I know they do. So I'm going to use my influence, I'm going to use my relationships to try to impact it so that other people don't have to deal with what I dealt with. And so now there's the legislation, and they put like $4 million in this fund every year to provide up to 25% like down payment assistance to any Black business owner or any business owner who is looking to buy commercial property. And then from then on, when I needed the additional money to fund the renovation, then that was just another, kind of me tapping back into community with the folks in the council and my civic engagement to say, hey, we need to introduce some emergency legislation. I'm going to need money to continue this project. And so the entire council and the mayor unanimously agreed to support me on finishing the project. So I didn't have to acquire any loans for that. But that was just, like kind of a continuation of my community, right? Me being involved in community in such a serious and intentional way made it easy for me to do that. Like during construction, with all the things going on, I was able to kind of seamlessly create legislation and get get grant money and reach out to council without having to take a break. Like these sorts of things typically take months and sometimes years for people to enact legislation. And I was able to do it, some of it honestly within weeks because of my community engagement in DC. So it's like a different approach to, to accessing the money that we need to grow our businesses. So there are multiple ways to do it.
Wow, 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 wow. So I hope everyone listening is taking notes. I'm making mental ones so I can stay engaged within this conversation. But I've learned in the past 10 minutes from both of you, like all the ways and financial disparities that we've had to go through to open up these spaces, to open up the strip mall, like you said, Miss Angel. Like if I wanted to open one now, I know I'm like, okay, I might have to care about the pavement. I might have to care about the roads on the outside, the trees, like what all of that goes into account. And having, again, conversations like these where we can be exposed to that, because a lot of what we're talking about here is not in a book. It's not, you can't look at it online. I know AI is real popular now. Even sometimes AI is not going to give us all those special details when it comes to, we just ask them, how much do I need to invest into own a strip mall? How much do I need to invest to open up, a store or a storefront? Some of these small things that you mentioned aren't included in that. So again, I'm so appreciative of the value of what you mentioned about how you went into your community. And this goes back to the authenticity and storytelling, right? Because of how you've engaged with your community, because you've showed your commitment to uplifting and creating a space and to empower your community, people saw that value in that and they wanted to invest in you. They were like, yeah, here's the funding so you can continue on with your project. Here's the funding so you can continue to expose other communities to what you are doing. That is so valuable. And those conversations and those connections are so important. And as we break through our financial literacy and as we continue to teach others about that, I think that your engagement, both of you, has created in me such a way forward. And how like me personally, I'm going to be totally honest, I did not open up a business account for Perfect Timing Podcast until a month ago. So all the things and all the investments that I've been making to make Perfect Timing what it is now as I'm creating the reboot is just really now starting. And of course, through the help of the Rockstar Fund and how I've been able to receive funding through that, along with other organizations. Beyond that, everything else has come out of pocket. And I have incredible parents who have been able to support me with that process and, applying to schools. I go to a almost 60K a year university. That is not cheap, but I've been exhausted so many resources to be able to not only stay a student, but continue to be a civil activist, continue to be in my community and share stories and the importance of storytelling through my platform, Perfect Timing. And just like you were saying, Janelle, about, we spend $100 a month on Starbucks easily. We go into Target, and I'm on TikTok. So everyone's like, my cart right now on TikTok shop is over $10,000, like we're so quick to be like, let's go buy this, let's go buy this, let's go buy this. But it's like that same money can still be invested into small businesses, especially Black businesses. And she's kind of like a mentor financial advisor to me right now. And sometimes she'll share little tidbits on her story about different ways to, handle your finances. And she was like, most of the time she starts off, when she gets a new investment, when she gets, a new paycheck coming in, she uses that first 10% of that paycheck to invest in a small business, to invest in a charity. So then she's not even starting off with 100%, and her value in her money is going to something important. So as we continue to engage in our communities, to myself and those listening, that's an important way for you to stay involved, and an important way for you can stay invested within these communities and show what you value. So I appreciate both of you for your contributions today and what you've shared with us. I want to go ahead and move on into some Q&A questions. We do have 2 in the chat at the moment, and this will be open to either one of you. So the first question is, how would you recommend someone market their first product?
Social media. It's free. It's easy. Like you shouldn't be spending money. Your first product, you shouldn't be spending any money off jump. Like you need to spend some time, join social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, all of them, honestly, everything, like post it on social media and share it. And it's like anything else, right? Like you start with your community and then you allow it to grow, but also don't expect your people to be your first customers. But I also am not mad at that, right? I know people have different views about that. People go on rants about, friends supporting celebrities, but not supporting them. Like your friends don't owe you nothing, right? Like I didn't start my business for my friends to have their cabinets filled with the spice suite. They are my friends. they over there. My customers are over here. If they happen to join, it's like a Venn diagram. If they happen to join in the middle, then that's cool too. But I'm not bashing my friends because I go over and I catch lorries in their cabinet, right? Like it's just not that serious. You just gotta stay focused on growing your business. But I would say to market it on social media first and just keep on growing it at a pace that makes sense. Don't get into the hype that have you trying to, grow too quickly, too much, too quick, too soon, because that's also dangerous. But know when to pivot, know when to scale, and know when to get out too.
And I'll just add, I would say before you even start marketing, do your research. Do your research. Do you know that your product that you have is something that people need? Is it something that people are going to buy? Because a lot of times we think our idea of what we have is good because we think it's good. But then when we are looking to make it profitable, it is not profitable. It is an idea that we think is good. And so I would start there. I mean, there's a great way to, grab a group of people and, do some research, do some market research, poll them, see what they think about your product, and get some honest feedback, and just make sure, that you actually have a product that people will buy, because that's one of the number one reasons why people are not successful, especially in the CPG world, is because what makes your product different than the 99,000 of them that are already out there?
I completely agree. And especially to what you said, Angel, sometimes your friends and family are not going to be your first customers. At first, it's not going to be cool to support your friend. Then you're going to make it big and get to this place. And then they're going to ask you how you did it. I was like, you were there from the beginning. You know exactly how I got there, and what you were, to your point, Janelle, how we've invested in these communities and how we've continued to grow and prosper also starts with the research to the entrepreneurial programs that I've graciously been a part of, and just like learning and teaching as I've expanded my platform. A huge chunk of that was based on what does our customer look like? What's our target audience? How are they going to respond? I was tasked to interview like 10, 15 people on this idea that I had about a potential media business. And that was a huge part, and it was exponential to my progress into shifting, okay, what does this look like? How is it going to change? What else do I need to inquire about that I didn't consider the first time? Because like you said, it might look interesting and fun to us and very impactful, but will it sell? It's a cute t-shirt, but will people buy the t-shirt? So very valuable information. Another Q&A question in the chat we have: do you use sponsored ads, Google or Instagram? If so, how do you find it beneficial? And I know you mentioned this, Angel, that social media is literally free marketing, free advertising. But do you guys have any special ways that you advertise beyond social media?
Yeah, I just brought on one of my friends to do some social media marketing. So she's going to start running ads for like our business school and our farmers market. But that's literally just because I have a grant and wrote in a marketing line item in the grant. So I'm letting her use it. What my method and what works for us is not what is typical. So I also recognize that, right? Like us not having to spend money on marketing and, having been able to get into as many homes as we have, or having the connections that we have. But I also use some opportunities as marketing. So for us, my goal was never to be in the grocery store, right? I don't really have a dream of going into mass retail in that way, because I don't want to give up that much of my profit. I'm not trying to do this thing where I have to give you my product for half price so that you can make a profit and I take the percentage. Like, again, I come from a family of hustlers, and when you're thinking about streets and how things work, like that's just not how things work. Like I just can't seem to my business mind still can't make sense of that, because my hustler mind just can't conceptualize it, like giving you that much of my product when I could just sell it myself. So I don't do that, but I do look at other opportunities as marketing, right? So there we are in like the Smithsonian and African American History and Culture Museum. And so I negotiated my percentage. So it's an amazing deal for us, but I look at that as marketing. We're in Bloomingdale's flagship store. I look at that as marketing. The things I've done with Nordstrom, I look at it as marketing. Like it looks like retail to some people, but for me, it's marketing, because then we get, we're on their website. They send out the magazines to their users, and we're in the magazine every month and those sorts sorts of things. So there are other like non-traditional ways to think about marketing beyond just like Facebook ads and Instagram ads and, you know, those sorts of things. I would say to be creative in how you do it, especially now with like influencers and all sorts of ways to be able to creatively spend your marketing money. Really think about where you can get the most return on your investment, no matter how small your investment is.
Yeah, I I agree with Angel. I mean, we don't spend a lot of money on ads, especially not on Facebook or Instagram. But what we have focused around is collaborations. A lot of our collaborations, to Angel's point, we look at that as marketing as well, because now you are pulling, whoever you're collaborating with, you're getting in front of their audience, they're getting in front of your audience, you're pulling your audience together, which makes for a more powerful impact as opposed to you just marketing your product by itself. The other area we've found great success is just growing our own email list. When we first started off, before we even launched Boyd Cru Wines, we really started off pre marketing about how we were coming. When we were coming to market, when we were going to be launching, when our wine was going to be coming out, just creating that vigor and that excitement. And through that, we directed everybody to our landing page, which wasn't even a full website yet, so that we could start capturing our community's information and be able to communicate with them on our own terms, as opposed to, having to rely just on social media to do that. And so really when we want to now, where we have a email list of about 6,000 people. And so now when we want to have a conversation, excuse me, when we want to have a conversation or when we want to share something that is impactful that's going on with the business, we know where we can do that in a way where we have our audience's attention.
Absolutely. And again, agree with both of you in terms of engagement and getting people to tune in with you, the advertisements that you might create. And, I wanted to uplift what you said about, collaboration. I don't know if you guys heard about the discourse about Beyonce winning album of the year finally, but a lot of people were saying she was like, well, she had a lot of people on her team. She had like 100 plus songwriters, and everyone else, the other, nominees only had like one or two. But it's like, you can tell that Beyonce had all those songwriters and collaborators and people that she put on to create this beautiful body of work. And it showcased when she won that award. So there's value in collaborating with other people. There's value in saying, hey, the only answer you can get is now. So expanding that email list. There's so many that I'm a part of where I'm like, ooh, there's a lot going on. But sometimes I get that one email. I'm like, ooh, I want to engage with this. I want to see what's going on with this. So I think that also encouraged consistency and just putting yourself out there and just being like, they can read the email or they don't. But one day someone's going to watch it and they're going to be like, I want to invest in you. I want to buy your product, So I find that collaboration is certainly important. So in the interest of time, we do have two more questions left for you all. And then I have a final question to wrap us all up. So let's try and wrap this up in about 5-ish minutes. Someone asked in the Q&A chat, do you guys have any advice on hiring? And I think this is a little more tailored to you, Angel. They asked, like, how did you find your Spice Girls? And then a second question that's a little bit more broad. They said, could you speak to, so this is someone who asked in the chat, could you speak to how to remain dedicated to your mission as you age and mature? And what type of grounding techniques are used to remind yourself that success isn't a race and may take time? So just to reiterate again, people are asking how people are asking, how did you find hiring? And then the second one, yeah.
Because I want to make sure we really answer the questions. And I think sometimes we get lost in the multiple questions at the same time. And I don't want people to leave feeling unfulfilled. Right. So the question I think that you said was directed to me about hiring. I didn't hire the Spice Girls. So they don't work for me. It's a different type of system that I have set up. It's actually a business model that I learned that I kind of created through a conversation I had with the U.S. Department of Labor's legal department years ago. They learned that the model that I was running my business under that didn't exist. And so I decided to trademark it. So I trademarked it as Black and Forth. So it's the idea of going back and forth with Black business owners, which then became the name for the strip mall as well. So that I can continue to brand and use that name for marketing purposes. So that people, when they ask about it, I can answer in this kind of longer way to get at all the components of what Black and Forth is and what it means. But in terms of hiring, I tell people, like, you have to be really clear about what your mission is in business, right? And not the mission and vision statement like you would think of for like a nonprofit or this like flowery thing, but like what you're in it for, right? And for me, I was in it to get free. And so because I wanted to get free, that's what I sought most relentlessly. And so I put systems and things in place to allow me to get free quickly. So I'm not at the Spice Suite, right? Like I don't work at the Spice Suite. I actually tell my friends that I kind of feel retired. Like I haven't worked in the business in so long, in years. I work on the business. I travel. I create recipes. I go in and do my Instagram live, but I'm out, you know, before the store opens. I go to our farmers market because I'm there to shop. I'm there as a customer. But I've set up my business in a way that it is in some ways automatic, like things, you know, and I found good people. But the first person that I hired was an accountant. And the reason why I hired an accountant first was because I knew that continuing to do my books on QuickBooks was not going to allow me to scale my business in the way that I needed to. It served as, you know, it ran its course, and I was able to do it for as long as I could. But I needed somebody who had a really good command of money to be able to look at my money and tell me, this is what you can afford to do. This is what I suggest you do. Let me know what you decide. And then after I decide, then we come back and set and assess it. Like, okay, this looks like this is a pretty good use of that money. Or I really wish we could have did this, you know, this way. And a good accountant, it's really hard to find a good accountant. But a really good accountant will really help you to see your money regularly. And so I would suggest for folks who are starting out, who can't afford an accountant yet, one of the things that my accountant, when I brought them on, they helped me to understand is the profit first business model. So it's based on a book called Profit First. And so we use the profit first business model, and it is extremely helpful whether your revenue is $1,000 a month or $1 million a month. Like my current accountant, I know people always ask me to like refer them. They work with, you know, if you have six-figure revenue monthly, at least, then they will, you know, they work with you. So I don't typically, you know, refer them a ton, but they are amazing. But I always share any things that they teach me that can be applied to any person at any level in business. But hire who you need first, not who you want, right? Like, because I would have wanted to hire somebody to run the store, but I had an accountant before I was even able to step away from the store. I'd rather be there working 40 hours a week, keeping the store running and making sure that the money is right before I hire a sales associate to be in the store all week, just so that I can be off and the money not be handled.
All right. Well, thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeanette.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were waiting on me to me
Oh,
to
no, I
chime
mean, if
in
you
on
have something to chime in, you
that.
know, either toward the question about your mission or like, you know, how you handle hiring within your wine industry business.
Well, I think Angel tackled the how to hire, so I'll tackle mission. You know, and the question was, how do you stay on track with your mission? Is that correct?
Yeah, so the question was kind of tailored to how do you connect with your mission and allow it to grow as you age through your, you know, career as an entrepreneur.
Sure, sure. So actually, this is a really good question because you know, as I mentioned before, I pivoted from the event industry. I owned an event planning firm for 13 years before we decided to, you know, launch Boyd Cru Wines and step into the wine industry. And much of that was because I realized that season was over. And so I think, you know, one of the things that we have to be very careful about sometimes is thinking that all of our talents and skills and our gifts are just for one thing. And because sometimes when we do that, when we have that mentality, we end up staying in a place that we're not supposed to be in for longer than we're supposed to be there. And so I would just caution, you know, entrepreneurs or whoever had the question, you know, to just have those check-ins with yourself where you have the opportunity to ask yourself, you know, is this still what excites me? Is this still what I'm passionate about? Do I still see a way for me to grow this passion or grow what I am doing in this space right now? And be forthright, but be honest with yourself. Because if it's not, that's okay. One of the things I wish that somebody had told me, and I think this is one of your questions, so I hope I'm not jumping the gun. But one of the questions I wish somebody had asked me or told me at the very beginning of my entrepreneurship journey is that it is okay if you wake up tomorrow and decide that that's not what you want to do anymore, because in entrepreneurship, sometimes we have the mindset that what we're doing now is what we're going to be doing for a lifetime. And that is not true. That is the biggest lie that we have sold to ourselves. Entrepreneurship, to Angel's point, is freedom for most of us. That is what attracts us to entrepreneurship, is freedom. And freedom comes with you being able to decide that this season of what I am doing is coming to a close so that I can now go and be great in another area that I am called to. And that in essence is truly entrepreneurship.
I completely agree. And I adore your response. As I started in entrepreneurship, really when I was 12 years old, so much has changed between when I was 12 and when I was 20. And when I officially started my podcast at 15, and I took a hiatus from it in the past year to join my first year of school, I'm like, okay, what does my podcast look like now that I'm 20 years old? How does that change work? How does my mission still stay the same? What do the conversations look like now? So encouraging that, it's not a race. And like you said, I can wake up one day and be like, maybe I don't want to storytell anymore. I don't really see that happening for me. But, what if I wanted to pivot and do something a little bit different? What if I wanted to go into politics? What if I wanted to do more public service, And so it's okay to fluctuate. And with the conversations and the panels I've been able to be a part of in the past, especially as Black women, we don't have to be limited. If you see yourself in Italy at the end of your life, having a restaurant and selling sweets, why can't you do that? If you want to have a career in politics and switch to just being a homemaker, what you can make our life is ours. And I feel like both of you have taken control of that and have inspired me and our audience today on what it means to create impact and what it means to create change and what it means to jump over obstacles. So thank you both so much for your commitment to our conversation today.
Thank you.
Of
Thank you for having me.
And of course, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and skip over the last question I had for you all, but I'm sure we will be commuting, conversation coming into community post conversation today. So for all of you all joining us, thank you again for participating and engaging and asking questions. And I encourage you all to stay engaged with the Washington Area Women's Foundation. Before you go, please stay tuned. Like I said, in more ways you can stay involved. And next month, the Women's Foundation will celebrate Women's History Month with more inspiring events, including its next hashtag Ask Her Conversation, as this is a seminar conversation we're having, and it's National Women's History Day charity happening on Happy Hour on March 7th. So please visit their website and event page for more details. And again, thank you so much, Jon'll and Angel, for joining us. I wish you so much success and love with Boyd Cru Wines and the Spice Suite. I, again, totally enjoyed this conversation. And
same to you.
And hopefully I can have you guys on perfect timing.
Thank you so much. Good luck.
All right.
Thank you. Everyone have a good day.
Thank you. Take care.